One of the significant historical events around which we can talk about the book of Isaiah is the Syro-Ephraimite crisis, which starts in Isaiah chapter 7. To understand that, the Bible really only gives us about 2 verses of explanation. Let me take a little bit longer to give you some understanding of who the players are. We have 4 real important players here. First, we have King Ahaz, who is the king of Judah, whose capital is in Jerusalem. We also have King Pekah of Israel, whose last name was Bu. No, not really, that was just a joke. His capital was in Samaria. Sometimes Samaria is called Ephraim. We have King Rezin of Aram, which is also known as Syria, and their capital is in Damascus. Now, those 3 countries, Judah, Israel, and Aram, are all about the same size. They would have roughly the same population, a little bit bigger than the other, but within, very, very close in their population. The 4th character is our major international superpower. King Tiglath-Pileser III of Assyria is our major international superpower. He is known as Pul in the biblical text. That is a shortening of his Assyrian nickname, Pulu. And he is the big bad. He is the huge empire with the massive military reserve, economic reserves that was marching across the Near East, going wherever he wanted and taking whatever he wanted, any time that he wanted. So he was a huge major international power when we talk about the Syro-Ephraimite crisis. And the 3 little nations knew he was coming. And so Pekah and Rezin decided that the best way to fight off Tiglath-Pileser III was to join a coalition. So their hope was that they could convince King Ahaz of Judah to join their little coalition of the willing to fight against Tiglath-Pileser III. Well, Ahaz didn't feel like he wanted to fight against Tiglath-Pileser III. He was scared of him. He was big. He'd seen him march through just 8 years before and go wherever he wanted, and he didn't think they were going to succeed, so he didn't want to join the coalition. This made Pekah and Rezin unhappy, so they decided to make him join their coalition. So Pekah and Rezin now decided to attack Judah to take Ahaz off the throne and put someone on the throne that would commit Judah's military resources to try and repel Tiglath-Pileser III. That's the situation facing Judah when Isaiah preaches in Isaiah chapter 7. And like I said, the Bible just gives you about 2 verses to explain that, so I thought some exposition might be a little bit helpful. Basically, God tells Isaiah to go to tell Ahaz, don't do anything. Just don't worry. But that's a hard message, right? You're facing now the enemies of people who used to be your friends, the Arameans and the northern kingdom of Israel. And if that's not bad enough, you've got the giant major international superpower bearing down on you, led by Tiglath-Pileser III. And now God says, don't worry about it. Just do your wallflower impersonation and don't worry. That's a hard message. And I think God knew it was going to be a hard message to take, because God gives Ahaz what we have all desired at one time or another. In Isaiah chapter 7, verse 10, God says through Isaiah, again the Lord spoke to Ahaz, saying, ask a sign of the Lord your God, let it be deep as Sheol or high as heaven. We've all wanted this. Remember that a sign is something that confirms the prophetic word, and God is saying, ask whatever you want to confirm that I'm telling the truth. I know this is a hard word. I know that you're going to have a hard time believing me, so ask whatever you wish, and that will prove that I'm telling you the truth. I mean, you want the sky to be green, you want the grass to be purple, you want to be able to fly, whatever it is, I will make it happen to prove to you I'm telling the truth. Well, Ahaz gives an answer that sounds good on the surface, but you need to understand how he says it. Ahaz says in verse 12, I will not ask, I will not put the Lord to the test. That sounds like a good answer, but what he's really saying is, it doesn't really matter about the sign, I'm not planning on doing what God said anyway. That's a bad sign. So Isaiah responds by saying, hear then, O house of David, is it too little for you to weary mortals, that you weary my God also? Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Look, the young woman is with child, and shall bear a son, and shall name him Emmanuel. He shall eat curds and honey by the time he knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good. For before the child knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land before whose 2 kings you are now in dread will be deserted. So God decides to give him a sign and says, before this child Emmanuel knows right from wrong, the land of these 2 kings, the northern kingdom of Israel and the Arameans, those 2 kings are going to be deserted, just to prove to you that I'm telling the truth. Then he gives him an additional sign. In chapter 8, verse 3, God tells Isaiah to go have relations with his wife. In verse 8:3 it says, I went to the prophetess, and she conceived and bore a son. And the Lord said to me, name him Mahar-Shalal-Hashbaz. Best name in the Old Testament, quite frankly. That's a great one to pull out when you need character from the Old Testament, Mahar-Shalal-Hashbaz. Took me a while to learn how to say Mahar-Shalal-Hashbaz, so I like to say Mahar-Shalal-Hashbaz as often as I possibly can. Name him Mahar-Shalal-Hashbaz, for before the child knows how to call my father or my mother, the wealth of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria will be carried away by the king of Assyria. So now we have two signs. We have the sign of Emmanuel. Before Emmanuel knows right from wrong, the land of the two kings will be taken away. And before Mahar-Shalal-Hashbaz can say my mother and my father, the wealth of Damascus and the wealth of Samaria will be carried away. So we have these two different signs in chapter 7 and chapter 8. So what happens? Well, Ahaz decides that he wants to go ahead and basically tell on the king of Israel and the king of Aram to Tiglath-Pileser III. He becomes an Assyrian vassal. He surrenders. And what happens? Well, just what you'd expect. Tiglath-Pileser III comes. He reduces Israel to just the nation of Samaria, their capital city. And the only reason he didn't destroy the capital city was because the king bought him off with basically the storehouses of gold that were in the north. Aram was completely destroyed. In fact, in 733, the city of Damascus was annexed as an Assyrian province. It actually was so destroyed they couldn't even stay and exist and rebuild. Tiglath-Pileser III dies in 727. Anytime you have a leadership change, that's a great time to rebel. You'll see that, well, throughout history, quite frankly. Israel is promised help from Egypt and encouraged by Egypt, withholds tribute from Assyria. Assyria, of course, doesn't like that. They come, they besiege the northern kingdom for 3 years, and in 722, a date that I would want you to remember, because it's important, Samaria falls and the people are deported by Sargon II. Judah is the only nation left at this point. The people are deported throughout the Assyrian Empire. The Assyrians had a very scientific way of handling conquered peoples. They would spread them throughout their empire and resettle them, and then bring other conquered peoples and settle them in so they could breed away the problem. If you've ever heard of the lost tribes of Israel, those tribes were lost because they were lost ethnically. They weren't able to hold on to their identity because they were spread throughout the Assyrian Empire. So for the rest of the story now, we'll only be talking about the southern kingdom of Judah, who survived as an Assyrian vassal at this time.